Man, where do we start? I don't even know where to start. You drove for DEI for 2 years in the AC Delco car.
Yeah.
And I remember that team when Dad drove for it. I remember that team as Dad's sort of home family team with Tony Sr., Rick Bost, eventually Tony Urey Jr. Jeff Green got put in the car, had some reasonable results, but the team was still sort of growing, understanding how to run a full schedule because Dad never ran a full schedule with the team. You get in the car, ran 2 years, got them to victory lane. You won at Nashville.
Yeah.
And you built a lot of the cars. You worked in the shop. This is a period of time back then when you spent a lot of hours during the week working on the cars, right?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, my background came from building my own race cars and racing up in New England, and I used to work a full-time job. People don't realize that when you're racing not for a living. I used to work a full-time job so I could eat and pay my rent, and then I used to race. And if you made an extra couple $100, that was great. If you didn't, you still had your job to fall back on. And so we used to work till 5, 6 o'clock at night, have something to eat, go to the race shop, work till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning every single night. That was just a routine that we were used to. And when I actually moved down to Charlotte and went to work for your dad, I thought it was pretty amazing because, I was like, man, it was like my dream job. I can just get up in the morning, go to the shop, and work on race cars. And this was awesome. And I think I told your dad, I said, I just need enough money to live and a bed. Just put a bed in the shop somewhere and give me enough money so I can feed myself, and we'll go racing and win a lot of races. And, obviously, I guess like that in me. So, but the point of my story is it was like the first day or second day I was working full-time in this dream job, and it's like 4:30, and I'm seeing all the guys going to the bathroom. I'm like, I asked Tony Urey, I said, hey, what's everybody doing? Oh, man, they're washing their hands. They're getting ready to go home. I'm like, man, it's not even 5 o'clock. And then I'm thinking to myself, if everybody leaves, what am I going to do?
Right.
What am I going to do in the shop till 1 o'clock in the morning? And a lot of times I stayed because when I originally moved down here, I actually lived in your dad's house in a spare bedroom for a while until he woke me up at 4:30 in the morning every morning, and I begged Ty Norris to take me into a spare room in his house so your dad wouldn't wake me up so early every morning because I'd work till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I can't tell you how many times it'd be 9, 10 o'clock at night, and your dad would walk in, and I'd hear the cowboy boots kind of marching across the floor, and I'd look, and he'd be like, Parker, what the hell are you still doing here? I'm like, Dad, we got to race this weekend. We got to get this car done. Everybody left at 5 o'clock, and your house is only right there. I could probably throw a rock and hit it, and I'll just walk home when I'm done working on the race cars. And he said, well, just, you don't need to work all night long. You worked all day. I said, that's what I'm used to. So it's more what you're used to than
He's
something
like, no,
different.
You don't understand because I'm going to wake you up at 4:30. You need to go.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, and the way I was woken up, a lot of people don't know is you used to kick. I don't know if you ever kicked your bed, but he used to kick the end of my bed where the bed would almost rise up off the ground, slam back down the ground, and he'd be like, Park, get up. I'd be looking at him like it's still dark out. And he'd be like, get up, you're going to sleep your life away. He said, I got all these new deer. I want you to come take a look at it. So I was like, we'd have to go down on the farm, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd go down on the farm, check out some of the new livestock he bought. And
what are you thinking in your head when you're looking? I know you're probably going, oh, well, that's awesome, right? You're saying all the right things. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking, he's crazy for waking me up so damn early in the morning, first of all. And then I raced cars. That's all I did. I didn't hunt. I didn't fish. Never really had any interest in hunting or fishing. And he was just such a big hunter and fisher and knew everything you need to know about deer and livestock. And everything that I've learned, I learned from him because my dad, all he did was race. Yep. So I never knew a deer could jump like an 8-foot high fence. And he showed me that one time. He had one deer that kept jumping over the fence, and we went down there with a big red spotlight and headlights off on the truck, and we're going 60 miles an hour across a grass field and in the dark with a big red spotlight. He's like, keep an eye on that deer right there. Keep an eye on him. And I was watching him. and that deer reared back, looked like he was sitting down or maybe trying to take a poop or something. And next thing you know, he just scaled like this 8-foot high fence, and I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know deer could jump that high." And he's like, "Yeah, he's one of my prize one." And he,
We got to get him back
you
in
got to
here.
get him back in.
Carl Lewis. We
in.
call him Carl Lewis.
Yeah.
He can
So I mean, the stories are endless, and I know I've told the story before about being with your dad, and he always had electric fences. Yeah. Every fence he had garage door openers on his visor. He had like 15 of them, and you'd come up to a electric fence, and we're coming down this dirt road going back on the farm, and we're cruising along probably 50 miles an hour, and he's hitting all these clickers on top of his visor, and that fence ain't budging. And I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to time it. I'm like, "Oh, we're going 50 miles an hour." I'm like, even if he hit the brakes right now, we're going to hit that fence. All of a sudden, boom, the fence starts opening. I said, there ain't no way this fence is going to get all the way open before we get this truck through it at 50 miles an hour. So at the last second, I was seat belted in and braced up against the floor, and if you know what I mean, tightened up. And I was like, I'm like, "Yeah, we're not going to make it." And he looked at me as that fence was open. He said, "You don't tell a 7-time Winston Cup champion how to drive." And we went through that fence, and you heard boom, boom, and it knocked both mirrors off both sides of the truck. And I looked at him. He had that half mustache grin, waiting for me to say something, because we did make it. The things that didn't make it were the mirrors.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh,
pretty funny story.
So online on Twitter, one of the fans was talking about the redheaded Stepchild, which is a race car that we had a lot of success in, and you said, "Ask Dale Jr. who built that car."
Yeah.
I want you. Maybe you could tell us.
That's funny, because that was one of the first cars that I had built for DEI, and basically the story went. We went to one of the big tracks. It might have been Charlotte, and then we were getting ready to go race at Hickory, and we're taking the same car. And I said, if I know anything, I know how to get a car around a half mile, because that was my background. I knew the car we took to a mile and a half track was not the car we needed to run a half mile, and so we went and we struggled, and I think Randy LaJoy won with Steve Bird, and I went to Dale and said, "Man, if I know anything, I know how to build a car for a short track. I know we're going to Nashville next, and let me have a shot at building a car." So we did, and I think we were using Hudson Pagan cars at the time, and this car was built by Mike Laughlin and his group, and they built the car, and we went and picked it up, and we did the body ourselves on it. And the reason why I got the name the Redhead Stepchild was because anytime somebody worked on the car, now remember the past story, I was there 12 hours a day. So anytime somebody worked on the car and they put a bracket on the car and I thought it was too heavy, I'd wait for them to go home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, cut the bracket off. So everybody got mad at me that was working on the car. So everybody boycotted working on the car. And long story short, I finally got the car done, and we went to Nashville to test with Tony Ewing Jr. and Tubier and a couple of guys. And the car that we tested with for 2 days was pretty fast, and I kept begging them, roll this car out. So to appease me, they rolled the car out, and it was like a 10th slower. And then one change, and it was a 10th faster. So Tony Ewing said, "Man, this car's pretty damn good, you know?" So we took it back, and Dale come in the shop. He said every car we had was painted gray. The frame was painted gray, and then had the blue and red AC Delco and white body on it. He come in the shop, and he told the body guys, he said, "You paint this car bright red, the inside." And so they did. And I said, "Why do you got to paint it red?" He said, "Because when I'm sitting in my motorhome at one of the NASCAR Cup races, and you're running around in the back, and it's got that red frame, I know it's like I know it's that car you spent all that money on."
I always wondered why they painted that chassis red.
I thought you knew that.
No.
And
he wants
so
to know why.
He'll
know why.
It was pretty funny because, I mean, he was so smart. He knew that he probably wouldn't be at the race, the short track race. And when he was sitting in the motorhome, he wanted to be able to see that red chassis. Either run, he swore it'd run in the back, and I swore it'd win the race. And thankfully I was right. And it was so funny because he called me in Victory Lane, and he said, "How's that redhead Stepchild?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that was the first time it was called the redheaded stepchild because I would always complain, no, we're not going to get it done. Nobody's helping me work on it. And he said, because you keep cutting everything off that everybody helps you put on the car, So anyway, just a great story.
That is the car you won your first race with?
Yeah. Won the first
and
race.
you raced it too?
Yeah, I won in 98, 99, I think we won 7 races with that car.
Yeah.
I mean, it was everywhere we took it.
You remember the stepchild?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had the stepchild and then the step mama, right?
Yeah.
Because we built another one, or Dale Jr. had another one built from Mike Laughlin, and it was supposed to be the twin of this car.
Right.
They won a bunch of races with, and they struggled with it. I think we ended up looking at it, measuring it, sending it back to Mike. They redid the clip on it, brought it back, and Dale Jr. ran it like 10 laps and said, all right, we're back.
Those cars, the difference in those cars, it had a drop snout.
Yeah.
And so meaning to everyone listening, the pivot points on the front clip were dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, for whatever reason, lowered the center of gravity, and all the measurements and everything else made the car just turn so much better in the center of the corner. And the car, if a lot of people remember the car that we ran at Richmond in 01, was the Gossamer car. Was that 01? I don't remember. I think it was.
Remember, yeah.
That was a drop snout as well, but a Hutchinson-Pagan drop snout. But the drop snout, why would a drop snout work so well at short tracks versus the bigger, 1.5 mile tracks? You didn't run a drop snout.
Yeah, a lot of what it did was just like what you said. It just really helped the front end turn better. And being a drop snout, like you said, it changed the points in the front end, but it actually lowered the roll center. So it gave the front more grip. There was different camber changes, which was better. You didn't want to have a lot of camber change on a big track because you're going 180 miles an hour, and it's a difference between 100 and 180 if you believe that. But the way the car would set in the corner, have a low center of gravity, have a low roll center, and have a quick camber change would actually help the car rotate to the center of the corner.
Makes a ton of sense.
And it made a ton of sense, and that's what we learned and what we used. Like at tracks as big as New Hampshire. New Hampshire was a mile.
You did this with your mods.
We did this with our Busch North car.
Okay.
And we worked with the modifieds too. So different type of suspension, different type of weight, but we learned a lot with the Busch North car and racing against guys like Kelly Moore and Dick McCabe and just all these guys that would just dominate. Andy Santerre up in the Busch North. They all had it figured out where they'd get these roll centers, either centered up or moved to the left or lowered and just get the car to react in a different way. Which when I moved down south, the majority of tracks that we ran were a half mile or smaller. And then when I moved down south, the majority of tracks were 1.5 miles or bigger. So, it just seemed like once we got a chance to go to a short track, I was like, all right, now we're in my wheelhouse.
Right.
I'm still learning how to run some of these big tracks and aerodynamics and everything else, but the short tracks I felt like I knew pretty well.